On June 16th, 2023, the first ever Flash movie will be released. Set in the DCEU, Ezra Miller will be reprising the role, hopefully for the last time, of Barry Allen aka The Flash. Despite the troubling lengthy development process and the problematic, miscast, universally hated lead, the heads of Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios have praised the movie as one of the best superhero movies of all time. More recently, the studio was confident enough in the movie to play it at CinemaCon 2 months before its release, and early reactions from people who got to see it are overwhelmingly positive. Plus, the trailers do look pretty good. For all intents and purposes, this movie looks like it will probably be a lot better than anyone would have expected, given the aforementioned tumultuous development process and disliked lead. But something about this movie, outside of Ezra Miller being an awful casting for Barry Allen, has bugged me from the start, which really came to a head as recently as a few days after the CinemaCon screening. This might be a spoiler, although the director confirmed it in an interview, so it isn't really, but there will be a lot of cameos in this movie from across the DC multiverse, showing characters from movies and TV shows from the past, which they already did in a DC property in Crisis on Infinite Earths. In fact, Ezra Miller's Barry Allen was one of the bigger cameos in that crossover, and more recently they did something similar on Titans. There was a concept video from a long time ago that leaked online which showed some of the cameos, including Christopher Reeve's Superman, and more recently, like I said, the director openly confirmed it in an interview. There were also plenty of rumors for a while that Grant Gustin's Flash will be cameoing in the movie. In a recent interview, Grant Gustin did deny these rumors, but Andrew Garfield denied being in No Way Home. The actors have to lie if they're under a certain contract, so we can't really believe the actors in that respect. That being said, it does seem like he was telling the truth, because in the same interview where the director talked about the movie having cameos, he mentioned a few that they wanted to include, but there wasn't any quote-unquote room for in the movie. This includes Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, Marlon Brando's Jor-El, Burgess Meredith's Penguin, Cesar Romero's Joker, and finally, Grant Gustin's Barry Allen. The director, Andy Muschietti, went on to say that the list of cameos was huge, and they played with the idea of including DC characters from TV, but they did have to pick. So basically, there's this huge list of cameos from across DC history in a movie about the Flash, and the character they decide is a good idea to leave out of this list is the version of the Flash who lifted the character's name into the zeitgeist in the 2010s, whose TV show had worldwide appeal and lasted for 9 seasons, an actor who, despite being relegated to a CW show, easily outshone the high-budget cinematic version throughout the entirety of the 2010s and early 2020s, despite the latter being cast on the day his TV show first aired. Its second episode, Grant Gustin is inarguably this generation's definitive live-action Barry Allen. Ezra Miller's version of the Flash canonically got the idea for the name Flash from that version of the character in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that's the character we're not picking because there's no room. There's going to be so many cameos for Superman and Batman, but in a movie called The Flash, there's no room for a cameo for The Flash. In fact, from certain rumors, it sounds like they're giving a cameo to a character from the CW, that being Teddy Sears playing Jay Garrick. But he didn't even play Jay Garrick, he was pretending to be Jay Garrick, he was Hunter Zolomon. Why not give a cameo to John Wesley Shipp, who's had the most Flash-oriented career out of any actor who exists, and actually plays Jay Garrick? To me, this whole situation shows such a lack of respect for the live-action history of The Flash from the people making this movie, because it feels like they don't know anything about the TV show. They just took the first Jay Garrick who appeared there, despite not knowing that he doesn't actually play Jay Garrick, and then they're not including Grant Gustin, despite the fact that he should be like the #1 cameo that appears in this movie above anyone else. He's also the most requested, but let's be honest here, the live-action history not being respected is not exactly surprising, because like I said earlier, there's been something bothering me about this movie for a very long time, and it connects to what I just talked about, not just a lack of respect for Flash's live-action history, but also a general lack of interest in the history or world of the Flash in general. This movie and all of its trailers heavily feature Michael Keaton's Batman's return as a way to pull on some nostalgic heartstrings and bring in tickets. I don't think anyone under the age of 40 is excited about the return of a 70-year-old Michael Keaton to play Batman, but I guess that's what the other Batman is for. Ben Affleck's Batman, it sounds like, will only have a large role in the beginning of the movie, but that didn't stop the trailers from featuring him heavily. And it does not end there either. The movie will feature a version of Supergirl who looks a lot more like a female Henry Cavill Superman than Kara Zor-El. Despite Flash having one of the best rogues galleries in comics history, the villain seen in all of the marketing is General Zod, a Superman villain to pull in any fans of Man of Steel. Spoilers, there is going to be another speedster villain, but from what we can tell, it's going to be a completely original character. My point is that it very much seems like Warner Brothers simply did not have faith in the Flash by himself to make any money, so you need to have two Batman in there, because Batman makes money, Supergirl, and the villain from Man of Steel all in there to make up for it, leaving no room for any actual elements from the lore of the Flash, a lore chock full of almost 70 years of supporting characters, villains, and stories to choose from, even if a lot of those stories feature Wally West, not Barry Allen, but still, they could have taken inspiration from so many of those stories and used so many of those villains. Now, yes, the movie is indeed based on a story where Barry Allen was the main character, and in fact, this movie doesn't only feature one Barry Allen, but two, and clearly will have a heavy emotional element in it regarding Barry's mother. Yes, the movie features Batman and Supergirl and General Zod in high stakes, all for the sake of selling tickets, but at its core, it's about the Flash, and yes, that is inarguably a true statement, but at the same time, let's be honest here, Flashpoint is the single most mainstream and well-known Flash story ever made, and in fact, it's the only Flash story that's already been adapted into a movie 10 years ago in animated form, plus it was very loosely adapted into live action already on the CW show, although yes, that was a very disappointing and very loose adaptation. Flashpoint is at a point where it's not the top of the barrel anymore, it's outside of the barrel, it's been done, and defaulting back to it again shows them not wanting or having any interest in delving any deeper into the immense lore of the Flash. Now yes, it's a great story, and it's coming at a really good time with the upcoming reboot, but it doesn't sit right with me that Warner Brothers basically said the only way we think a Flash movie will succeed is if it's based on Flash's biggest story, features the return of Michael Keaton's Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, a Supergirl, a tie into Man of Steel, a whole bunch of cameos, and a universe-changing event. Now, this is Warner Brothers. It's a studio that for decades only made Superman and Batman movies or Superman and Batman adjacent movies because they simply do not and have never had any faith in any of their other characters. And sure, Green Lantern flopped and Shazam didn't do exceptionally well, but Wonder Woman and especially Aquaman really did. I mean, Aquaman is still the highest grossing movie in DC history, not Superman, not even a Batman movie. It's goddamn Aquaman. So why do they not have faith in the Flash, one of their biggest and most beloved characters who's already held a highly successful TV show that had worldwide appeal, and as a result of that lack of faith, it gave us a Flash movie that's just as much a Batman movie as it is about the Flash. And now, not including Grant Gustin in the cameos because there's no room, it simply doesn't sit right with me. There's always been something off about this movie. Ezra Miller is thoroughly miscast, the suit in all of the trailers and images looks very weird half the time, and the movie does not seem to care about Flash's comic book or even live action history. So yeah, it might end up being a great movie, and honestly, with all the good buzz, as a fan of Flashpoint, and a fan of the DC Universe, and a fan of movies, I'm still excited for it, but as a fan of The Flash, with Ezra Miller playing him and the lack of care for Flash's history, well, I'm already disappointed for those aspects of the movie. Here's hoping the DCU will do more with the property of The Flash.